Despite the difficult year, many archaeological and historical discoveries came to light, including a sprawling geoglyph in Peru, a trove of mummies, the tomb of the legendary Romulus and more. 10. Cat revealed at Nazca. A 120-foot-long geoglyph of a cat discovered in Peru in 2020 is the most recent example of a Nazca line to be found. The geoglyph was heavily eroded and barely visible, but conservation work revealed a more complete picture of the cat, which looks a bit like a child's doodle. Archaeologists estimate that the geoglyph was constructed sometime between 200 BC and 100 BC, a time when many Nazca lines were being built. 9. Amazon Ice Age art. In 2020, archaeologists announced the discovery of an 8-mile-long, 12.9 kilometers, canvas of Ice Age art that dates back 11,800 to 12,600 years. Drawn using ochre, the images include depictions of mastodons, giant sloths and other now extinct beasts that lived at the time. The images were drawn in the hills above 3 rock shelters in the Colombian Amazon. The drawings also include human handprints, geometric designs, and images of deer, tapirs, alligators, bats, monkeys, turtles, serpents, porcupines, camelids and horses, among other animals. There are also drawings showing people hunting animals and interacting with plants and trees. The excavations were made possible thanks to a 2016 peace treaty that put an end to hostilities between the Colombian government and FARC, a rebel guerrilla group. With the onset of peace, the region became accessible to archaeologists. 8. Mummies Galore. More than 100 sealed coffins with mummies have been found at Saqqara in Egypt. Excavations are ongoing and more mummies will likely be found. Since summer 2020, Egyptian archaeologists have been excavating a series of burial shafts at the site of Saqqara and have found an ever-growing number of sealed coffins with mummies inside. As of November 14, the count was up to over 100 coffins containing mummies, and as the excavations continue, more will likely be found. In Egypt, tombs were frequently robbed in both ancient and modern times, and to find so many undisturbed, sealed coffins with mummies is a remarkable find. Numerous artifacts have been found within the coffins, including 40 statues that depict Ta-Sokher, a deity who was an amalgamation of Ta, the god of Memphis, and Sokher, also spelled Sokher and Seeker, who was the god of Saqqara. All of the finds date to between roughly 712 BC and 30 BC, a time when Egypt was often controlled by foreign groups, such as the Assyrians, Persians and Greeks. 7. Tomb of Romulus. In February 2020, archaeologists announced the discovery of the tomb of Romulus beneath the Roman Forum Senate House. According to legend, Romulus founded Rome in the 8th century BC. He and his brother Remus were supposedly abandoned as infants and raised by a she-wolf. When they reached adulthood, the two brothers got into a dispute over which hill Rome should be built on, and Romulus killed Remus. Today, most historians regard the story as mythological and doubt that Romulus really existed. However, the ancient Romans took it seriously and placed his tomb beneath the Senate House, the heart of Roman politics. Inside the tomb, archaeologists found an empty 4.5-foot-long, 1.4 m, sarcophagus made of a light volcanic stone, called tuff, that was quarried from the Capitoline Hill beneath the Roman Forum. The tomb has been 3D laser scanned, and future excavations may reveal more details about it. 6. Female hunters. In 2020, the idea that males did all of the big game hunting while females gathered herbs and plants was proved wrong, as archaeologists found a 9,000-year-old burial of a female hunter in Peru. She was buried with a hunter tool kit that included projectile points and flakes, and she may have hunted vicuñas, wild ancestors of alpacas. The archaeologists who excavated the woman's remains do not believe she was an unusual case. When they analyzed over 400 skeletons that had been previously excavated in the Western Hemisphere, the archaeologists found that 27 were buried with tools suitable for hunting big game and 11 of those individuals were female, suggesting that females often hunted big game in the Western Hemisphere. 5. Polynesians meet Native Americans around AD 1150. A large study that involved gathering DNA from 807 indigenous individuals from Polynesia and the Pacific coast of South America has revealed that Polynesians and native peoples of Colombia not only made contact, but also bred with one another around AD 1150. It's not clear how the groups met. The Polynesians may have sailed to South America or vice versa. Either way, their descendants were living in the Marquesas Islands about 4,350 miles, 7,000 kilometers from the coast of Colombia by AD 1200 and gradually branched out to other islands in Polynesia. 4. Biggest prehistoric monument in the UK. The biggest prehistoric monument in the UK was revealed in 2020. Dating to around 4,500 years ago, during the Neolithic period, it consists of 20 giant holes that appear to mark the boundaries of an earlier enclosure circle. Each of the holes is 32 feet 10 meters in diameter and 16 feet 5 meters deep. The holes form a circle stretching 1.2 miles, 2 kilometers, and covering an area larger than 1.2 square miles, 3.1 square kilometers. It's so large that it has Dinnington walls, the largest henge in the UK, at its center. It's not clear why the giant circle of holes was created. It's possible that it formed a symbolic barrier that told certain members of society how close they could get to Dinnington walls. Another possibility is that the holes were used to hold water during the wet season. In any case, the circle of holes is one of a kind, with no comparable prehistoric monuments known elsewhere, archaeologists said. 3. Assyrian rock panels. 10 ancient Assyrian rock panels showing carvings of Assyrian deities were discovered at a canal that dates back more than 2,700 years. They include carvings of Ashur, the main Assyrian god, who is shown on a dragon. They also show Ashur's wife, Melissu, who is seated on a decorated throne supported by a lion. Other depictions include the sun god Shamash on a horse, and the moon god Sin on a horned lion. All of the deities face in the direction of the water that flowed in the canal. The panels and canal were likely built during the reign of the Assyrian king Sargon II, who ruled from 722 BC to 705 BC. In the rock panels, Sargon II is shown at the beginning and end of the procession of deities. Archaeologists announced the discovery of the canal and rock panels, found near Mosul, Iraq, in January 2020. 2. Rich 9th century Viking longhouse on Iceland. In June 2020, archaeologists in Iceland announced the discovery of a 130-foot long, 40 m, longhouse that was built in the 9th century. It is one of the earliest Viking structures in Iceland to be discovered, and has lavish hoard of ornamental beads and coins archaeologists found. The finds include Roman and Middle Eastern silver coins, as well as hacked silver cut and bent pieces of silver that the Vikings and other peoples used as bullion or currency. The hoards also contained glass beads, rings, weights and a tiny fragment of gold. The Vikings who lived there may have acquired the goods by trading whale and seal meat and skins for them. 1. Mammoth Structure. A circular structure constructed out of the remains of at least 60 mammoths was discovered in Russia. Bones from reindeer, horses, bears, wolves, red foxes and Arctic foxes, among other animals, were also used to build the structure, archaeologists said. Dating back around 20,000 years, the structure is 36 feet 11 meters in diameter and may have had a roof made of animal hides, the researchers said. The purpose of the structure is a bit of a mystery. It might have been used for rituals or possibly food storage. At the time, pieces of animal meat were still attached to the bones, which would have made the structure smelly. Archaeologists could tell that they had meat on them because some of the bones were articulated, joined together, in a way that could only have been done if flesh was still on them. Researchers from Cornell University and the National Park Service have discovered the remnants of a wooden fort in Alaska, the Tlingit people's last physical bulwark against Russian colonization forces in 1804. The Tlingit built what they called Shiskano, the sapling fort, on a peninsula in modern-day Sitka, Alaska, where the mouth of Kasdahin, Indian River, meets Sitka Sound at the Sitka National Historical Park. The fort was the last physical barrier to fall before Russia's six-decade occupation of Alaska, which ended when the United States purchased Alaska in 1867 for $7 million. Thomas Urban, researcher at Cornell University, said, the fort's definitive physical location had eluded investigators for a century. Previous archaeological digs had found some suggestive clues, but they never really found conclusive evidence that tied these clues together. The researchers discovered the site using geophysical imaging techniques and ground-penetrating radar, a non-intrusive method that uses radar pulses to image the subsurface. To find Shiskano, Urban created a grid to see if the electromagnetic induction methods could spot the potential outline of the fort, and then created a small grid for dragging the ground-penetrating radar. We believe this survey has yielded the only convincing, multi-method evidence to date for the location of the sapling fort, which is a significant locus in New World colonial history and an important cultural symbol of Tlingit resistance to colonization, Urban said. In 1799, Russia sent a small army to take over Alaska in order to develop the fur trade, but the Tlingit successfully expelled them in 1802. Expecting the Russians to return, the Tlingit built a wooden fort over 2 years, the trapezoidal-shaped Shiskano. The Tlingit armed it with guns, cannons and gunpowder obtained from British-American traders. When the Russians returned in 1804, the Tlingit held them off for 5 days, but suffered a setback when a gunpowder supply being carried to the fort from storage across Sitka Sound blew up in a canoe. The Tlingit clans escaped Shiskano by night across Shi, Baranof Island, to Chautalay-Withakute now, Halibut Man Fort, and the Russians then established a trading post at what is now Sitka. A large-scale survey was necessary to convincingly rule out alternative locations for this historically and culturally significant structure, said co-author Brennan Carter of the National Park Service. The restoration of a soot-filled ancient Egyptian temple has revealed the previously unknown names of ancient Egyptian constellations, according to experts in Germany and Egypt. The restoration has also uncovered the gorgeous original colors the ancient Egyptians painted the 2,000-year-old temple. As workers in Egypt remove soot and dirt from the temple, sometimes with a mixture of alcohol and distilled water, the original painted carvings and hieroglyphics beneath are so vibrant, it looks like it was painted yesterday, project leader Christian Laetz, a professor of Egyptology at the University of Tübingen in Germany, told Live Science. But we are not repainting anything, we are just removing the soot. During the restoration, researchers cleaned ancient carved scenes depicting the constellations, including the Big Dipper, known as Masectiu, and Orion, known as Sa. They also found inscriptions about previously unknown constellations, including one called Apedun Ra, or the Geese of Ra, who is the ancient Egyptian sun deity, Laetz said. However, without an image to accompany these descriptions, there's no way to know which stars in the night sky they describe, he said.
The hidden secrets built into medieval castles that most people never knew existed. We all hold different associations with castles. That's certainly true, but how much do we really know about their design and the purpose they served for those living behind their walls? While medieval castles might seem arcane, they did serve a very specific function when they were built. They also hold dark secrets. The first time you probably heard of a castle was when someone was reading fairy tales before bed. The truth is, the castles aren't all embellished with golden gems. In reality, when castles were built during the medieval era, they served a very specific purpose: to defend and protect the people behind their walls. Today's castles might be museums or houses for royalty, but they were designed to serve as fortresses during times of war. All of the planning that went into them was about defending the grounds from enemies. When you think of a castle's first line of defense, you probably think of a moat, right? Traditionally, a moat was a large body of water that circled the castle and separated it from the land, but it wasn't there to keep enemies from crossing. For most people designing castles, their biggest fear was that enemies might dig underneath the walls to gain entry. If there was a moat, it ensured that tunnels would be immediately flooded. In fact, for some castles, the moat wasn't even located outside the place at all. Instead, it could be found between the first and second walls of the castle. That way, anyone digging a tunnel would get a truly unpleasant surprise. Speaking of unpleasant surprises, moats didn't exist solely to keep invaders from digging tunnels to gain entry either. The moats served other purposes for those living in the castle. For instance, they made a great way to dispose of human waste. When it came to other methods of protecting the castle, one of the oldest traditions was the concentric circles of defense. Looking at this castle from above, you can see how the circles were created to make entry very difficult. Concentric circles of defense were designed to act as a series of obstacles. While the layout of medieval castles might be all too familiar to us when it comes to how we look at castles today, they were a true innovation in the world of design when they were originally built. The concentric circle's defense meant that invading armies would have to conquer one obstacle after another, slowing them down as they made the assault on the castle. First there was a wall, then there was a moat, then another wall, a keep, and so forth. The main gate of the castle might look imposing, but to our modern eyes that's all it is. The truth of the matter is that during medieval times, the main gate of the castle was more than intimidating, it was downright deadly. The main gate was often comprised of two barriers. If invaders made it past the first entryway, they could become trapped between the first and second gate by the castle's inhabitants. They might think that their siege was going to be successful, but they were wrong. The invading soldiers would then be trapped in one of the castle courtyards, and this wasn't pleasant to say the least. There were thin slits in the courtyard walls that allowed castle inhabitants to fire upon the trapped intruders. The secret fortification of castles doesn't end there, either. Even the stairwells played an important role. Most of them were designed to be deliberately narrow, and to spiral up in a clockwise fashion. And there was a very sneaky reason why. They were designed this way so soldiers running up them would have their sword hands, usually their right, against the wall. The narrow and curving stairs would make it much harder for them to reach for their weapons. Of course, the people who lived inside the castle would know the layout of the space very well, right down to the crowded, cramped and narrow staircases. This gave them the ultimate advantage, should intruders breach the walls. Secret passages were a critical part of the design of any and every castle that was built. These passages could serve many different purposes, including allowing a means of escape for those who lived in the castle. These secret passages could lead to rooms where the castle's inhabitants could take shelter in the event of a siege. They could also serve as a great way of getting much-needed supplies and other assistance into the castle. Sometimes the secret passages led to secondary wells for the castle's inhabitants, in case the attackers breached their walls of defense and poisoned their drinking supplies. Castles may be glamorous, but they're also critical war fortresses. That's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to all the secrets of the way medieval castles were made. Check out these stunning images in the video posted below. Some of the designs were truly genius.
A fascinating discovery has just been made in Peru. A group of 20 wooden sculptures believed to date back at least 800 years in a passageway of the walled ensemble of Utsa'an in the archaeological complex of the walled city of Chan Chan. It is believed that the wooden sculptures served as guardians. 20 wooden carved idols, one of them in very poor condition, and 5 murals with the same iconography, discourse were found in the walled complex Utsa'an. The sculptures, each 70 centimeters tall and around 800 years old, would have fulfilled the function of guardians and were found in 20 elongated niches located in the entrance of the aforementioned walled sloop north of Chan Chan. We assume they are guardians, Henry Gayoso Ruler, who is responsible for the project, restoration of the perimeter walls of the walled complex Utsa'an, told El Comusia. Gaiso said that each sculpture presents a mask possibly made of clay and bones or crushed beige shells. They stand and carry a scepter in one hand and a object that could be a shield in the other hand. They could belong to the middle stage of Chan Chan, between 1100 and 1300 AD, making them the oldest sculptures known on this archaeological site, he added. On the other hand, archaeologist Alejandra Renfico Chunga also maintained that they are anthropomorphic figures. The scepter, which they carry in one hand, gives them rank, status, while the shield they carry in the other hand would mean defense, protection, she said. Regarding the murals, the director of the Decentralized Directorate of Culture at La Libertad Archaeological Complex Special Project, Maria Elena, stressed that it is the first time that Chan Chan has revealed an entrance corridor to a ceremonial courtyard completely decorated with reliefs in mud. Experts say that this is an exceptional discovery. Both the statuettes and the murals were found in July of 2018 and were covered with earth and pieces of adobe, but they were only presented by the Ministry of Culture on Monday. The minister of the sector, Patricia Balbuda, said that it was an exceptional find that allows showing how magnificent the work of the Chumu was. In fact, experts say that the decorated area has 33.13 meters and is an extraordinary find both for its age and for the aesthetic quality of the mural decoration. Gayoso added that the murals present scapes, fishnets, volts, waves, and representations of a lunar animal. Findings like these expand our knowledge of Chimu architecture, and in particular, this monumental architecture, he told El Comercio in a recent interview.